Hello, this is Sandra Brown of Happiness Past 60. And today we're going to talk about the 50s, being raised in the 50s as a child. And I was just wondering if your life in the 50s was similar to mine. Because I was talking to my husband, Mr. Bill, and some of the things I mentioned about my childhood, he said, no, that didn't happen in their childhood, or his childhood. He lived in Illinois, and I was raised in Indiana. So, at the end of this video, I'm going to bring up a couple of kind of strange things from the 50s. And I want to know, and please let me know if this was common the way you were raised. All right, well, I was raised in Hammond, Indiana. Most people worked in the mills there, or whatever jobs they had. We didn't have much at all. My family, I don't know, I suppose they were in the poverty level, but I never knew it because we were raised in a Columbia Center housing project. So I moved there when I was maybe 8 years old, and I suppose I was 15 or almost 15 when I moved out of there. The housing project, Columbia Center housing project, was built by Mrs. Roosevelt. All the buildings were red brick. The roofs were totally flat. We had concrete floors, and we didn't have wall-to-wall carpet, I'll tell you that. Little throw rugs here and there. I remember my mom mopping the concrete floors. They were fine in the summer. When you're barefoot, I remember it felt good on your feet. But in the winter when you got up, I remember it being cold. And I don't remember owning house slippers. You put your shoes and socks on. If you hear a little barking here, that's Millie. She's barking at the chipmunk. She's on the deck and I'm on the porch. But for heat, we had coal stoves. So the coal was, and I'll have a picture in here too, but there's a coal bin out in front of the house built onto every house. And there was a lid on top of the coal bin. We used to sit, kids, we didn't have lawn furniture, so we'd sit on the coal bin. But on top of the coal bin was a door, a trap door that opened up, and that's where they poured the coal in. But when you wanted to get the coal out, down below, real low, was another chute that opened this way. And we would have a little shovel and put it in a little bucket and bring it in the house and put it in the stove. So when you needed coal, you called the coal company and decided on what kind of coal you wanted. So the better coal was called Pocahontas. I remember that. And the coal was tighter and smooth. And I think it burned longer. And I don't know what the other one was called. We didn't get it, but it was rougher and lighter. So when you needed coal, they would come dump a big pile of it out in front of your house. So where we parked was just like gravel. And so it was in that area right there. They did it for everybody, you know. They put a big pile of coal there. And then my dad, my father, and my brothers, they would go out and load this little coal bucket with coal, with I think a bigger shovel. And then they'd bring it in and dump it in the inside that coal bin. That's just how it was. We didn't think a thing of it. Now, there were radiators in the house. I'm not sure how that works. and I know some of you are probably familiar with it, especially if there's some men listening, but how did the heat get to the radiators? So if you're heating the house with a coal, is it heating some kind of water or something? Because I thought radiators, the heat came from some source of water. Well, anyway, so we had radiators in the house, in every room, I think. And although I can't remember it being in my bedroom, I only remember the radiators in the living room. I mean, I'm telling you about things as a child, what I remember, okay. But I do remember in the wintertime, your gloves would be full of snow, the scarves and things like that. And we would, when they were wet, and we would lay them on the radiator for them to dry or to warm up. As far as hot water, we never had hot water in the faucets. If you wanted to take a bath, well, we didn't do that too often. I would say once a week, you might get a bath. And it was a big ordeal because there was a little tiny stove in the kitchen. Not a stove, a coal burner, a little coal burner connected to a water tank. Okay. And you built a little fire in there. It took forever. So I think they hardly ever built a fire in there to heat that water up. What they did was just take kettles of water on the stove, put big kettles of water there, and then my dad would carry it into the bathroom and have the tub plugged up, pour the hot water, and then they would add cold water to that. So in between, we just took bird baths. Yeah, that's what we did. And I was thinking we took bird baths with cold water. I don't know. Yeah, I don't remember having any hot water at all. I don't remember thinking, like I said, thinking anything of it. It's you just get used to the way life is. So, and I can remember a bad experience. My father I think he must have been going to take a bath. And he had on trousers. He never wore jeans, ever. Never saw my dad in jeans. He wore trousers, but he had his shirt off. And he must have been going to take a bath, and he had this big kettle of hot water. And I don't know how it happened, but the bathroom door was closed or something, and he didn't know it. And the hall was dark, and he hit that door, and all that hot water went all over his chest. I just remember a lot of excitement over it, and I felt so bad that happened to him. Oh, okay, as far as washing clothes, well, Mom had a wringer washer, and laundry was done once a week, and I think she used Tide, and it was that powdered Tide. And I think she thought that the more Tide you put in, the cleaner your clothes are going to get. And it was a big thing in the neighborhood to have the whitest clothes. So when you hung your whites out in the sun, they really did get white, I'll say that. But, so it's the same thing. We heated water and poured it into the wringer washer tub. And then as it agitated, and I can remember the smell of it and the steam that if it was in the winter, it would steam up the windows. But it was kind of a cozy feeling, the sound of the washer going, and I don't know, just day-to-day life like that was just nice and cozy. And it probably helped heat the house up too in the winter. Wasn't too good in the summer though. But so the suds would get higher and higher, I remember, in the wash machine. They'd be getting taller and taller. And then Mom would come over with her arm and go, whoosh, and she would swipe off the suds and dump them into this big tub that was in the kitchen. Now the tub was on one side in the kitchen with a wooden board over it. And in that tub was a built-in scrubber. It had all those ridges, and you take the clothes and rub them on there. Get all the, if you didn't have a wash machine, you would just rub them up and down the side of this big sink. And a lot of people gave their kids baths in there too, because it was real deep. On the other side's where you did your dishes. Okay, so she would do that, and then she would fill up that big sink after it was done washing with cool water for rinsing. So she needed to get all the water out of there, so then it would go through the wringer. And she would hold it from one side, and they would flatten them all out and get all the water out, and it would go right into the rinse water. And I always know she warned us to stay away from that wringer, because there were times that children would get their hand caught in there. Not good. So then after they went through that, she had her clothes hamper, I'm trying to remember this, on the floor, I believe, and she would run them through the wringer again now and get the rinse water out. Then they would go into the this clothes basket. Then the clothes basket, she would take them outside, and we had a big line. Everybody out there had a clothes pole, and they were concrete poured into the ground, very nice and steady. And you had big, long wooden supports for the clothesline. And you would get, once you got all your clothes hung, and they were really meticulous the way things were hung. It had to be a certain way. All your sheets and your towels and all your laundry. Everybody's seen your underwear in the neighborhood. And then my mom would always watch to make sure the neighborhood kids didn't run through there and touch her white clothes. But then the supporting poles, after they were hung, the clothes were hung, then the supporting poles would have maybe a little ridge cut out in it, and the clothesline would go down into that ridge, and then you'd push the stick up and make the clothes go up higher, because they're wet and they would pull down the line. And that line had to be tightened pretty often. I think later on we had more of a plastic line, but the one I remember was actually like a rope. So the whole neighborhood on wash day had clothes up. People had clothes hanging up. Then the next day was the day that she should say this. After they dried, in the winter was funny, because Mom would hang out my dad's, if there was long underwear and they would freeze, and then she would, they'd goof around and walk them into the house, So, anyways, yeah, that was horrible to have to hang your clothes like that. Or people would hang them all over the place just trying to dry things. We didn't have dryers. So then when the clothes were dry, then she would get a little Coca-Cola bottle, and on that they had these little things, I think there was a cork on it, and it would go down into the Coke bottle. You'd have water in there, and a sprinkler was on top with the little holes. And then you'd take the clothes, and she would sprinkle the clothes down, dampen them, roll them up, and put them in the clothes basket again. And now the clothes basket went into the refrigerator overnight. It just helped the clothes to iron better. They didn't have steam irons. But I do remember her iron had a button you pushed, and a little thing came out and kept it from laying on the ironing board and burning it. So the next day was ironing day. Now, that is a very, I don't know, I could just remember that so clear, my mother ironing. And they wore pin curls in those days, so it would be hot, and I was always in pin curls or little rollers in my hair. It seems like forever. If not that, then it was a ponytail. But Mom had these pin curls. They would, for those young people that don't know what they are, they would take pieces of hair and twist them around in a circle, lay them flat, and then you put a pin through it, 1 or 2 pins. And my mother was so good at that. She made the neatest looking pin curls. She really did. And she would sit for a long time doing my hair that way. I remember sitting on the floor. That's a very vivid memory. Sitting on the floor while she pin curled my hair. And then it took a long time to dry because my hair was long. And then she would make these banana curls out of it. They didn't just comb it out. It was like combed into curls. The big thing in those days was to have curly hair. And she, well, I better go back to her ironing or I'll get off again. All right, so the things I remember about her with ironing was her, well, she had to starch things too. They used liquid starch, like on Dad's shirts and different items that they wore, especially shirts and collars. So that was done the night before too. Liquid starch in some water. And I can't remember the story how that all went from them. Now we just have that spray starch. So back to ironing. All right, at this period, what I remember now, this first period of time, is we finally did have a little TV. And she would watch Arthur Godfrey. So do any of you remember Arthur Godfrey? And it was that Lucky Strike Hit Parade? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Lucky Strike Hit Parade. And they would have singers come on there. I remember a lady named Giselle McKenzie. Yeah, a dark-haired lady. And there was a blonde-haired lady. But anyways, they would sing all the hit songs. And my mother could sing pretty good. And so she had her pin curls with her scarf tied around it. She smoked Lucky Strikes. So she had her ashtray on the ironing board with her Lucky Strike cigarette burning. And she always had a little bottle of Coca-Cola. Mom was very trim. She probably weighed about 110 pounds, 5'2". And maybe either a Coke or she had iced tea. And we had one little fan that I remember. And when she's ironing, it might have been on her, at times. And she would be watching Arthur Godfrey and listening to them and singing and ironing. It was just a nice memory. And then she would hang the clothes on a rod that they had in the hallway. But she would keep all those clothes up that she ironed. And she was a really good ironer, very particular about it. But she'd keep all those clothes there till Dad come home so he could see all that she ironed. So he could go, oh, wow, you really did a good job ironing these. And, oh, you really worked hard. So I'm watching my time. I don't want to get this too long. I lived right across the street from the school. I think in 2 houses I lived, the one before that too, right across the street from the school. And the name of the school was Woodrow Wilson. The people who lived in my home, okay, there was Dad and Mom. There was my older half-brother, Corky, and his real name was Melvin. He hated that. Corky was a little character that used to be in the comic books, I guess, years ago. That was even almost before my time or earlier. By the way, I was born in 1942, so I'm 81. But, so, there was my dad, my mom, my oldest brother, Corky, I should say names on here. I guess it doesn't matter. But his last name was Will. His father passed away when he was 18 months old. So then my next brother was down the line with the middle brother or child. He was the middle child. It was Neil. Neil's last name was Funston. Neil was blonde and tall, grew to be 6'4", 6'5", in that area. He loved everything Western. it was mostly my childhood was with Neil. It was Neil and I, because my brother Corky, he ended up staying with my grandma and grandpa a lot, and grandma and grandpa always lived right by us. I think it was having more room situations like that, because there were several of us there. But before having a TV, we had, this is going to be my last story. I'm going to make this 2 parts because I'm going over. But we had a floor radio. And it was one of those big radios. And my memory of that is my mother sitting on the sofa, crocheting, and my father sitting in the chair reading the newspaper. They're both smoking. I was raised in a cloud of smoke. And as far as the radio, my brother loved westerns, anything on TV or radio. We didn't have the TV right away, but we would sit on the floor on this little throw rug and listen to the radio. But like I say, he loved the westerns. I can't remember what I listened to, but mostly I remember the one I loved was around Christmas time, and they had the story of the cinnamon bear. And I think one of the big stores put that out. Might have been Marshall Fields or something. But in fact, you can still listen to the Cinnamon Bear on YouTube. Just put Cinnamon Bear, and it will come up. And he loved the westerns. He loved The Lone Ranger, Hopalong Cassidy, The Cisco Kid, all of those. So I'm going to stop for right now. I will say this about TV. That TV didn't go all day long because there wasn't any programs. It didn't run all day like it does now. Programs came on at certain times. And then at night, at a certain time, they signed off. And there was nothing on there. And it would have a picture of an Indian. It was their logo or something. So I'll tell you more. We'll make it a part 2. Because I got to get a chit-chat in too, you guys. So I hope you're having a nice day today. The rain stopped finally. We've been having a lot of rain. And the sun is out. And I see the golfers are out there right now. And so I hope you have a blessed day. And I hope all is well with all of you. Okay. Love you. And I will have part 2. Okay. Bye now.